You're listening to the Mind Your Business podcast, episode number 68. Today, we're talking all about how to create an extraordinary year. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm James Wedmore, and I've built a 7-figure internet business that offers the financial freedom to do what I want, when I want. And I'm the first to say that hard work and hustle are not essential ingredients for your success. So, how do you build a thriving business from the inside out? This is the Mind Your Business podcast, featuring myself and co-host Phoebe Mroczek. Well, hello everybody, James Wedmore here.
And I'm Phoebe Mroczek.
And welcome to the Mind Your
Business
podcast. That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
We nailed that. We don't even need to edit it. We'll just leave it like that.
Perfect.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this special episode. It's a special episode because it is a special time of year in which we are recording this. A time of year where the hubbub of business begins to settle down and our minds start to drift and wonder about what we could be creating. What is in store for us in 2017 or whatever year you happen to be listening to this? But right now, we're recording this at the end of 2016. It's one of my favorite times of year, not just because of the holidays, not just because a Star Wars film comes out, but because we really get to put some of that conscious energy, creativity, and genius on what we want to create, what we want to accomplish, what we want to do. And that's exactly what we're going to be discussing here on this call. So I'm excited for that. We have some very special stuff in store that we'll jump into in a bit, won't we?
We will. And I know that I've been talking to so many of my friends about the past year and just reflecting, and everyone's like, oh man, this year was a doozy. and I don't know. I've been thinking about it, and every year I get to this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, it just went so fast. It feels like, or I remember exactly this time last year, and it feels like this year just went so quickly. But we have lots of stuff to talk about. But first, I want to hear all about, because you just wrapped up your launch yesterday. Is that right?
Yes, I did yesterday. Yeah, so, it was also an interesting time of year because November had, an event that ripped most of the world away from anything else. And with one of the, craziest intense election periods. And we actually had people in the inner circle and other friends and stuff doing launches and promotions during that time. And I kind of told them, like, you're crazy. What are you doing? And some people did end up saying, like, yeah, it made a difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, you couldn't go onto Facebook without seeing someone making a death threat. And I think trying to run a launch and a promotion in that time and cut through that noise is tough. So we knew months ago, I think it was like by the first debate, we were like, okay, let's make sure we're not doing anything in November. And I'm so glad we made that decision. Yeah, I was really proud. I mean, there's a lot of dumb decisions I make, but that was one I was very proud of. So we did this December launch, which came with its own risks in that it's the end of the year. That, what the biggest risk was? Not that it's the end of the year, not that people are not really, maybe they're not really in their front of their computer, they're more in like holiday mode and buying presents mode, but more of a concern with, I didn't really want to put my team under that kind of stress right before the holidays. And so we really made a concerted effort to say, like, okay, this is the latest we're going, and then I promise you guys get like the rest of the month to just relax and enjoy life. I promise. So we kind of knew that going into it. It was still a little bit of a risk. It was an epic launch. Super, super exciting. It broke all records for us.
Wow.
In our own PRs, our own personal records. Biggest card open day we had, biggest launch ever, and highest EPL, earnings per lead, which is the metric we track and measure for the performance. I also look at, there were no big mistakes that happened. Normally, like, the way we approach business is like mistakes, breakdowns, and problems are inevitable. It's really about how you going to show up in the face of them. And we didn't have any of those. I'm not taking credit for that. I'm giving that to my team. Like, they were on it. And we threw affiliates into the mix this time. I had a lot of my own fears around that. You know, you guys think that I'm just on this podcast, like talking down to people like I know everything. Yeah, right. I like go back to this podcast and listen to what I'm saying when I'm dealing with that next level. As they say, that new level, new devil. I don't ever want to feel comfortable for too long. Like I know what that no man's land is like, where you're just too comfortable. And so I always like to push myself just a little bit, not from a like something's wrong and I've got to do better, got to do bigger, got to do more, but like what's the next fun game I'm playing? And so for me it was, we're going to throw some affiliates in the mix, and that just went off beautifully. So yeah, we're just really happy on all fronts, excited for next year.
That's awesome. I'm so excited that you did the affiliate thing, because on an episode before you were talking to us about the lady that you met who kind of called you out on the taking advantage of affiliates.
Yeah, Jennifer Jimenez. That was Language Leaves Clues.
That's right.
And I think, you know, we get a lot of feedback from episodes and stuff. And, you know, we'll talk. I love it. You and I have all these inside jokes now. And like when we meet people in person and over social media, like they use those inside jokes with us. And I'm like, that's amazing. Because like, that's my life. I make these cheesy references. You know, I went to film school. So I had all these film geeks. So we would talk in movie quotes. And the more obscure, the better. Right? So and this is such a side note, but here's when I really fell in love with my wife, Chelsea. We were in a limo for a private party to a Knicks game. And my friend's dad... This is amazing. And Amy Porterfield's in here with me, and her husband, Hobie, and a few other people. And this makes me laugh so much. My friend's dad has some drinks, and he's passing out drinks, like sodas. And I go to him, and I said, Utah, make it 2. And he just hands me 2 drinks. And Amy finally turns to me. She's like, why are you calling him Utah? And Chelsea, without skipping a beat, just goes, it's from Point Break. And
Ooh,
I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm in love. I'm in love. That was our like first, that was a big night, because that was the first night I hung out with all my friends and brought, you know, this mysterious girl around for the first time. And
she nailed it.
And she nailed the movie reference. So I'm always speaking in these obscure references. Anyways, that is the type of tangents I'm talking about that I will go on. When I do remember what I was originally going to say, I'm so proud of myself, which was this, that I think that episode is powerful. I mean, what showed up for me in the episode was great, but to offer advice to our listeners to actually listen to your language and how you say things is so powerful. So I take these breakthroughs that I have in my life as the most precious, beautiful things that I don't want to squander and waste. So when I had that, I wanted to make sure that I took advantage of that. And in essence, the breakthrough was the reason behind why I was resisting affiliate launches, why I wasn't attracting affiliates, why I didn't want to say yes to affiliates. And so when I discovered that, you know, you guys got to go watch that episode. We'll link it up in the show notes. But once I discovered that, I said, great, so let's do something about it, right? Let's put this into action. And we did. And the long story short is, I mean, here's the ultimate breakthrough within the breakthrough. So what was going on is I had this fear that I'd be taking advantage of affiliates, that I felt guilty asking them to promote me. Like serious, straight up, just guilty and feeling bad. And then, of course, there's the fear if it doesn't go well. And I would just feel really bad, and I feel obligated, and you know, I didn't want to ask and all that stuff. And all of our affiliates came back saying that this was the greatest experience they've been a part of in an affiliate launch. They felt so taken care of. They had so much fun. Their audience loved it. Like all these amazing positive things. And you know, just look at our episode last week, episode 67, about taking imperfect action. I'm so glad I just jumped in and did it and didn't worry about it being perfect, but then stood in a commitment of, you know, the commitment I had to serving and supporting our affiliates. And we made it perfect. We made it everything they needed it to be.
Well, all the fun stuff that you were showing me that you actually did for the affiliates, I think, you know, comes from a place of like you were nervous. And so it was maybe like you were kind of overcompensating because you're a little bit nervous. You really want the best for them. And you said something to me before we started recording, which is kind of sticking with me. And you were like, I wanted them to make more money than I made. And
that became my commitment. That became my commitment. Was it didn't happen, because I think that's very rare for that to happen. But like, that was the attitude that I came from, is like, I want them to win. I win when they win.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was great. And anyways, speaking of this, what we're getting into today as we slowly drift into the topic of today, which is how to create an extraordinary year and a little dose of time traveling, which we will get into today. I put a big thing on my board of what I was creating this year, and it was a 7-figure launch. And I didn't have a 7-figure launch. We did 7 figures in 30 days, but I didn't have a 7-figure launch. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, I would take that.
But it was fascinating. Like, here's why we share this, is that for so many reasons, this is why this is so important, is like, sometimes we just create goals to create goals. And it's like, well, why does it have to be the 7 figures? Like, when you say I want to hit 6 figures, why is it 6 figures? What is it? Well, it's just a number. You know what I mean? It's like, well, it means something. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It just, people make it mean something, and it's silly, but it is, it's like these badges of honor and stuff. And I think when I get into this stuff like goal setting, and I don't do goal setting, I do manifesting, which is what we teach here about, like, okay, well, what do I want, and who do I need to be? What type of habits and practices do I need to, instill in order to make that come about? And part of it was to soften this idea of a 7-figure launch. And instead, we just let go of the attachment of how it needs to look and invited it to show up any way it wanted. And that's why I share it just bluntly. Like, well, but we generated that much revenue. It just didn't come from a launch, like one launch. It came from several different sources. And that's huge. And we're going to be talking about that today and as we go forward. So what do you think? Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it. This is like my favorite time. We just did a call a couple days ago, and I love the planning. I love getting excited. New Year's for me, I know everyone hates New Year's. I love New Year's. There's nothing about New Year's that I don't like, because you really are in this place where, it slows down. Maybe you see your family. I'm having people over. Like, it's just a nice time. And then now we get to really put our manifesting hats on and like get to work.
Now,
this is exciting.
And this is important, because I want to correct Phoebe here, is that we're not going to do any planning on this call.
Right.
We're really not. It's that word planning. Now, planning is important. We've already planned out Q1 of 2017. We did that in November. We have to, because we have live events and retreats and stuff like that. We have to have those dates way before our clients and customers would even consider having those dates, right? But this isn't planning. And I think this is the step that needs to come before planning. Planning happens once you already know what the results are that you're after and what you're up to creating and what you want. And then we say, okay, well, what are the steps to get it? And we have to start there. But that's not necessarily true. Because even if people say, okay, well, before planning, I have to create the picture, the vision, the list of the things I want, we have to start before that. We have to take a step back. And this is what I kind of call like the whole eraser, right? We have to take a whiteout pen to our lives and our businesses. And let me explain why for just a second. As I see it, us as human beings in our human condition, we allow for the past to dictate and therefore constrain what we create in the present, which ultimately affects our future, right? What actions you take here and now in this moment produce a result that can then therefore be created for your future. Like if I started working out every day, I could lose weight or gain muscle or whatever for the future, right? So the past is this thing that we kind of want to detach ourselves for a moment from, right? If I sit here and say, and it'll be a little esoteric for a moment, right? This will be a little theoretical for a moment, but we'll give you examples of stuff. If we're letting the past constrain our future, we can't create much more of a new, unique future. In fact, what happens is we kind of get into this vicious cycle where we have this feeling of being stuck. This is why we get stuck, because we're using our actions from the past to determine what we're going to do in the future, but those are the same actions that got us here, so we're just going to stay here. This is why we like to say what got you here won't get you there. But we keep trying the same things over and over again, different ways. We change it. We do more. We do less. We do quicker. We do longer. We do it faster, but we're doing the same things. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So we can let the past inform us, right? Like the stove is hot, so don't touch it. That informs us. Like, I learned how to drive when I was, 15, so that past experiences have informed me. But we don't let it run our lives or constrain our lives. So let me give you an example. Let's say you generated $100,000 in 2016. So you sit here at the precipice of the next 12 months and you say, I want 20% growth. That's what we do. We go, this is what I did. How can I do more of that? And this becomes a very standard way of operating. And so for some people, this is going to be jarring. I'm not trying to make people wrong or say you're doing it wrong, but you have to at least acknowledge that you are making decisions about your 2017 based on how you did in 2016. So you're letting your past results of what you thought possible determine your results of today. So when we say things like, well, we did this much last year, so what looks realistic and possible for next year to grow? And what that does is put you into this world that I call the world of more, where the answer is always more, 20% more, right? Work more hours, more energy, get more employees, do more items, put more items on the to-do list, create more products and do more launches. And then the result is that you're doing the same darn thing that you've been doing, just more of it, right? You have more revenue, but you probably have more costs. You have more customers, but you also have more commitments. You're working more hours, but you also have more to-do items. And at one point, because you can only play this game so long until you run out of the things that we only have a finite supply of, which is time and energy. And you really have to start asking yourself, how much longer do I want to play this game of just adding more on top of this?
So I remember we gave this example before on a previous episode about the bee trying to get out the door and they just keep banging harder and harder and harder, as opposed to just taking a step back and being like, oh wait, there's the door over there. And I think that we're conditioned to say this because, well, for me personally, when I was little, it's well, what do you want to do more or better of next year? As opposed to what do you want? And I think that probably goes, I don't know, but across the board when people are well, how are you going to improve based on last year? What are you going to do better? What are you going to do more of? And I think that's what you're saying, which just, I think, emphasizes so much of what we're here on the podcast to talk about, as opposed to doing more and better than before. How can you actually create from nothing?
So what we want to do with you on this episode is invite you to take a step back for a moment before we just make that unconscious decision to just add more to our lives, right? Less is more, perhaps, maybe. And we want to do two things. We first need to complete your past year. For us, it's 2016. And we're going to give you an exercise that you can run with. And when we complete the year, we have this easel, Phoebe knows it all too well, in our office, where it's a giant Post-it note pad of paper, huge, with big markers, and I draw on it and all this stuff, and those pages fill up very fast. And then in an instant, I just rip it off, and there's a new clean one. And that's exactly what we want to do with you. We want to make sure that now that you have this year filled, that we can take one final snapshot of it and picture assessment of it, and then rip it off and begin from a clean slate. Not from how do I add more stuff to this filled up piece of paper and try to fit more things into there, but how can we reinvent or recreate the next 12 months together from nothing, from scratch? Almost as if you could look at the next 12 months with a fresh set of eyes, like a newborn, right? Looking at the world for the first time. That's what we want to get you to start thinking. What would the next 12 months look like through the eyes of someone who had no prior beliefs, opinions, judgments, or reasons about what is possible or what is realistic.
So I had an exercise where I was sharing with a couple of my friends. I was like, I'm taking like 2016 and I'm looking at it like my Halloween candy. So I would like lay it out on the floor and pick out all the little things that I want to keep for next year. And they were like, that actually like puts it in perspective. I could actually see you. I was always the hoarder. So I would like hoard all my candy. But now it's like I get to choose all the Almond Joys and the Milky Ways and all the gross, disgusting candy, but what I want to bring into next year with me. But it's that laying it out first that I think is really important, and seeing, you know, the full picture of how much Halloween candy you got.
I love it. Did you go trick-or-treating this year?
I definitely did.
Oh boy. That's something that'll be on your list next year too, I'm sure.
I went with my nieces and nephews.
That's adorable. I love it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to a little completion exercise that you can do, and you can take this on every year. If you've been following me for some time, I usually tend to send an email out every year about this time and just repeat this lesson and say, hey, for those who want to do it, I'm doing it, go for it. Now we've got a podcast, so we do it here. And we're not going to do it together on the call. I'm going to give you the instructions, and you get to choose if you would like to do it. But that is the step one. And you want to give yourself minimum of 30 minutes, probably 60 to 90 minutes to do this. So the best way to do this is to write it out on paper. You don't have to, but to me, it really helps. And there's a little bonus piece of this exercise where it has to be on paper in order to do it. I guess you could print it out when you're done. But here's what we need to do. We're basically creating 3 columns on a piece of paper. Okay. So you want to create 3 columns, and the columns across the top, and let me explain it first, and then you can kind of go back and do it. Across the top are wins, why, and lessons. And then you can either turn it over on the back of the page and do the same thing, losses, why, and lessons, or you can just go halfway down the first page and switch the column from wins to losses. Okay. So what you're going to do, this is very simple. Even if that didn't make sense, just go listen to it one more time, but this will be very simple. You are going to write out all of your wins of this previous year. If it's 2016, start in January and just mentally go through this past year, starting in January, then February. What did you do? What was a win? What was a hell yes? What was an accomplishment? What was an experience? What did you get to do that you've never done before? What do you want more of? What's the Halloween candy that you would like to keep? And write those all down. It doesn't have to be huge. We're not here to impress people. This is for you and you alone. Okay? And then next to it, the middle column, you're going to answer the question, why was that a win for you? And you want to really get to the core of that. Like, why did this matter? And then on the third column, you're going to write down the lesson for each one of these. The question really is, what did I learn from this? How can I become a better person as a result of this? How can I grow as a result of this win? So the way I like to do it is I first just brain dump all the wins. Go through the whole list of wins for the whole year until you can't think of any more. Then I start back at the top and I say, why was this a win? And then what was the lesson? Once you've done that, you need to repeat that, but we're going to identify the quote-unquote losses. So obviously, loss is the opposite of win, so we have to use the word losses here. But what I mean by a loss is it didn't go as planned. Maybe it didn't go at all. What was something that didn't work out for you? What was something that didn't go how you expected it to go? Maybe you wanted to write your book this year and you didn't write it. What are the things that you don't want next year? That's another way to look at it. What are the things that happened or you wanted to have happen but didn't? And as a result, those are experiences that you don't want to have next year. And you're going to write out all those.
One quick thing that I did want to mention is when you're looking at the wins and the losses, just to examine all areas of your life. So not just necessarily in business, but addressing the like spirituality, money and finance, fun and adventure, health and fitness, anything that you can think of, I have listed on mine. So that's, I think, for me, why it took me so long, because I really addressed them each individually, month by month, and kind of went through and said, right, for January, what was my money and finance? What was my fun and adventure, my health and fitness, my connection and community, all of those things, and then listed them out on the wins and then on the back on the losses.
So this is pretty easy. It's also pretty powerful, especially if you can have one piece of paper where you can see everything that happened, everything that you accomplished, and all those beautiful, wonderful lessons, all on one piece of paper, whether you went on the front or the back or half on the top and then the second half. So what we want to do is, can we each do an example?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Phoebe, why don't you start and you share a win, a why, and a lesson?
Sure. So on the heels of our conversation from last week, my win was my Sonoma event that I hosted 2 weeks ago. And the why is because it's something that I've been saying I've wanted to do for a really long time. And I knew that when I would complete it, I was really stepping into my power. And the lesson for me around that was that imperfect action creates great momentum, that I need to trust my intuition, and that I think the biggest lesson for me in that was that success comes when I remember that it's not about me, it's about them, and coming from a place of service.
You know what else imperfect action creates?
What?
A great podcast episode. What? Episode 67. Go check it out if you haven't already. Phoebe tells all about her event, and it was awesome.
It was a commercial break.
Yeah, right. Shameless plug. Preaching to the choir. Okay, I'll go ahead and share a loss. And by the way, guys, I don't think we said this. This is for the entirety of your life. We're not just talking business. We'll keep it to business here. It's everything, and it's all connected. So do it all. You know, the realm of, health and wellness and fitness and spirituality and relationships and anything else that you want to include. Please do it. It's yours. Okay, loss for me would be this is like me splitting hairs here, but we didn't hit the goal I had for downloads for the podcast for the first year. Why that is a loss is because I set a goal that was pretty far off from it. I think we did half of what we wanted to. Now, don't get me wrong. We still got a huge amount of downloads. It's just like, to be honest, like talking myself out of this now and trying to be a little light on myself. And that's not the point of this, right? It's not to shame ourselves and beat ourselves up. It's just looking at like, what are the things that you said you were going to do or say you were going to have happen and they didn't happen? You just kind of, until you do a podcast, you don't really know what to expect. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to do 1 million downloads and we didn't quite hit that. Very grateful, and it is a win how many we did, and the podcast itself is a huge win, so I don't want anyone to think that there's a loss or a problem with it at all. But there is a lesson, because there's always a lesson, and that's why I wrote this down, is I say, well, what's the opportunity here, right? The opportunity is to really, what we're already going to be doing, stepping it up a notch, or 10, when it comes to the promotional and marketing side of the podcast. I don't think we did anything really to promote it this year.
We definitely didn't. And
that's a lesson I want to take with me. That's something that I want to be informed of, that I am being informed of, that I'm going to take with me into 2017 is that lesson right there.
Yeah, and I think when I was doing my losses sheet, I had so much judgment around what I was writing. And there were moments where I was like trying to coach myself out of it. And just, there was other ones where I felt like really bad. I was like, oh, I didn't run the San Francisco half marathon like I wanted to do. And then I really, I think it's coming from a place of like just putting it out there and looking at it with no judgment. Either way, was it a win or a loss? Great. It is what it is. Now it's so much more about the lesson or the opportunity available to you after having been through this process. So I would just encourage you to like stay really present, stay in the moment, but be really detached from what you're actually writing down, because I found myself not writing certain things on the list. And I was like, why am I doing this? Nobody's looking at this. But for some reason, it was hard for me to write some of the losses down.
That's such a great point. I can't stress that enough. Is this not here to, you're not trying to keep score, even though we're using the words wins and losses. You're not keeping score and you're not comparing score to somebody else. At the end of the day, life is just this big schoolyard of lessons. So the more losses, the more lessons. So kudos if that's you, I would really own those, this is an opportunity to look at it from a completely different angle. Wow, look at all the things I learned. And I learned those things because I took action this year and I stepped outside my comfort zone and did things I'd never done before. And it may not have gone the way I wanted it to, but I learned something. And that's going to stick with me forever. And that will affect how I show up next year. And that's what you need to do. So that's what we're doing. It's pretty simple. You write down all your wins. You write down all your losses. You write down why was it a win? Why was it a loss? What was the lesson? Very simple. Once you are done, the bonus exercise for it is to burn it. So we got a little like prayer affirmation for you. But if you want to take this piece of paper, take one final look at it, fold it up, and burn it in a safe way, right? Safely. I just love doing it. It's such an experience of like letting go and completing it and making like a little ceremony out of it. If you want to do this with your family, of some friends, if you're in a mastermind, your team, having them all do it. I think this is powerful. And so here's the little piece that we say with it. It says, as you're getting ready to burn it, or as you're burning it, you just say, thank you for these experiences. I have learned all that I have needed to learn from this. This is it, and it is perfect. I now declare these complete and release them. Or I now declare this year complete and I release it. Okay? And that's it. So you can rewind that and check that again.
Just simple, yeah. And you can come up with your own, right? When we did this exercise with the inner circle, and I remember Jimmy was like, some of this was terrible, some of this was awesome. And he just like burned it. And it's like, just, it doesn't have to necessarily be that, but, you know, kind of capturing the essence of what we're saying here is just like, this is my year on a piece of paper and it's perfect. And no matter what happened, I'm so happy and I'm moving forward. And, you know, I declare it complete and I release it.
Yes. That's phase one. What that should leave you with. So again, we're telling you what to do. I actually don't want us doing it right now. I want you to get through this episode almost like it's an instruction manual, and then you're going to go out and do it. It's like I'm giving you your workout for the day. Like, here's the things I want you to do. And then you go to the gym and you do it. So that's the first piece of this. This is the completion piece. We're not trying to just stuff more into the same of what you did. You're taking an assessment so that you can look at next year with an idea of what do we want in there and what do we don't. But we always start now with this blank canvas. So it's almost like, okay, I've burnt that, it's gone. Now I just have an empty piece of paper. Now the challenge is, as we move into phase 2, is that we are looking at what we want to create from January. So what creeps in? Ego, logic, or at least we convince ourselves it's logic, doubt, and uncertainty. Most of us say, well, I don't really know what I want. Of course, to that I said, well, if you did, what would you want? And then some of us say, I don't know if that's realistic, though. And I don't know how much time that's really going to take. Or if I'm overcommitting. Or if I can really do that yet. And so when we stand in that place, we're creating through this lens of doubt. And there's no confidence there. And so what we have to do is a little time travel. So we have to get into your DeLorean, and we have to come to this time next year. Assuming you're listening to this in December of 2016, we need to get you into your DeLorean and get you to the end. And we're going to ask a powerful question. Quality of our lives are determined by the quality of questions we ask. So we're going to ask a really good question, and you're going to write this down. And you're going to take as much time as you need to answer this. So here's the question. If we met up at the end of 2017, 12 months from now, so I want you to stand there right now and imagine that we've actually just met up, or we're on the phone or email or Facebook or something where we could have a conversation. And you had just had the best year ever. Your year. This is... You can look back at this 2017 and say, this was my year, right? How would you describe it to me? Now, remember, this is the end of the year, so you have to describe it in past tense because it's already done. So how would you describe it to me? What happened? What new experiences did you have? What accomplishments did you have? What was the essence of how you felt throughout the year? What did you do more of? And what did you do less of? Every verb in your answer, when you write this down and you just kind of want to be present to the question and just start writing, not looking for what's the right answer, what's the answer that's going to impress him, what's the thing that I'm supposed to say here, but truly, what made this year great for you? And then you're going to write with every verb in past tense. I got to do this. I finished that. I accomplished this. I experienced that. Past tense.
So I did an exercise similar to this in Sonoma, and I pulled out one of the women, and she was, I was like, choose a date. And she's like, November 1st. And then I just like could see her light up, and it was, she started talking about it. I'm like, no, like, let's kind of walk through this. Tell me, like, we're on the phone. This is awesome. What happened? And she just got more and more energized. And it was so fun to watch because she, I had them all close their eyes first, and then she like lights up and she had this big smile on her face, and you could just tell that she was like feeling it. And I'm like, this is amazing. And she goes, right, now I have to book that call with you for November 1st of next year. And I'm going to call you and we're going to have this conversation. And it was just such a nice, like, full circle moment where I can't wait to hear from her on November 1st because I already know what happened and I already know the end of the story. And it's just such a cool exercise if you do this. And the only spin on it that I put on is like, close your eyes, visualize it, stand in that place. How does it, use all of your senses? How does it smell? How does it taste? How does it, what does it feel like? Actually, like you're walking, okay, now the phone rings, like walk me through it. What is that experience like? And how do you use all of your senses to really create and craft that experience?
That's so great. And again, this is so powerful. And if you want to do extra credit, another way to look at this is if we just sat here and step one was to complete your 2016 by writing out your wins and losses. What if you could also do that for 2017 today? It's the same thing. We're just writing the book that is your life so that you can have or experience the having of more say in what you create. So we truly hope that you will try this on, give it a shot, give it a go, and see what happens. In fact, to go beyond this, because it's very simple, right? Because you can see what it is that we're doing here. We're trying to get you to get super clear on what you want, and what gets in the way of what you want is that part of you that's just trying to protect you. It's trying to say, well, you're going to have to step outside your comfort. You're going to have to be judged. You're going to have to be, criticized, or we don't want that to happen to you, so let's not really put it out there. And this is kind of a shortcut around that, right? You're just telling me what already happened. And so to go beyond this is that this is something that you could take with you the whole year, that you could re-answer that question every week, every month. You could just read that answer to yourself and remind yourself. You could see what else you get present to every time you look at it. And you can change it. That this doesn't have to be something that's right and there is a wrong way or a wrong answer. And this isn't set in stone, that you can choose a different answer at any time. So I hope that you guys will take it on. I hope that you guys enjoyed this and that you'll also let us know. Give us some feedback on how this goes, because I look forward to our conversation at the end of next year. Thank you guys so much for listening. We wish you a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Are you frustrated that no matter how hard you hustle, no matter how much you get done in a day, you still feel like you have little results to show for it? Do you feel like you're doing everything right, but there's still something missing? Well, what if there was an easier way? What if your business could be fun, effortless, and profitable? Phoebe and I have put together a free audio MP3 for you, compiling the 77 business affirmations for creating success from the inside out. And we want to give it to you absolutely free. This is your chance to rewire your brain for bigger results in your life and your business. To get instant access absolutely free, simply visit 77affirmations.com. That's the number 77affirmations.com.